Welcome to the channel. We're so glad you're here. If you love true stories that stir emotion and make you think, you're in the right place. Drop a comment and tell us where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. Make sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss tomorrow's powerful news story. There's something special waiting for you every day. What this royal guard did broke protocol, but won everyone's heart. It was a bright, cloudless morning in London. The sun cast a golden glow across the grand gates of Buckingham Palace, where crowds of tourists had already begun to gather. Camera phones were out, flashes popped here and there, and people jostled for the perfect angle. Laughter and chatter filled the air, but at the center of it all, unmoved by the commotion, stood a figure in red, Logan, a 26-year-old soldier from the Queen's Guard. Logan was the picture of discipline. His crimson tunic was crisp, his boots polished to a mirror shine, and atop his head, the iconic bearskin hat stood tall. He didn't blink. He didn't flinch. He simply stood, still and proud, like a statue carved out of tradition itself. His job wasn't just to guard a building. He was guarding history, culture, and a centuries-old symbol of British honor. While most tourists watched in admiration, soaking in the ceremony and elegance of the moment, not everyone in the crowd shared that respect. Near the front of the gate, a man in a neon green shirt with the words, "Here for the selfies," printed boldly across the chest, began drawing attention. He was loud, brash, and completely uninterested in the dignity of the scene unfolding before him. "Hey, soldier boy, smile for the gram," he shouted, waving his arms dramatically. His exaggerated antics drew laughter from his small group of friends. They recorded everything, clearly hoping to capture a viral moment. The man, who the nearby crowd began calling Mikey Cool, didn't stop there. He strutted back and forth, mocking the stillness of the guard, calling him a robot, a mannequin, anything to get a rise. But Logan didn't move. His eyes stayed fixed ahead. His body remained locked in place. That silence, that stillness, only seemed to push Mikey further. The contrast between Logan's discipline and Mikey's desperate showmanship grew starker by the second. Some tourists shook their heads in disapproval. Others whispered. The tension was subtle at first, but it was building. Something felt off. Everyone could sense it. This wasn't just a silly joke anymore. Something was about to happen. Mikey Cool wasn't done. After failing to get a reaction with his taunts, he took a step closer to the white line painted across the stone pavement, a boundary every visitor knew not to cross. It was more than just a mark on the ground. It was a line of respect, a silent rule upheld for generations. But Mikey, fueled by ego and the attention of his friends' phones, had no intention of honoring it. "Come on, man! Do something!" he shouted, standing now just inches away from the line. "You're really just going to stand there like a wax figure?" People in the crowd began exchanging uneasy glances. Some lowered their cameras. Others raised theirs higher, sensing something dramatic was coming. The mood had shifted from amused to anxious. Then, with a cocky smirk, Mikey stepped forward, one foot crossing the line, then the other. Gasps rippled through the crowd. A woman whispered, "He just broke protocol." A father pulled his daughter back behind him. Tension cracked through the air like static. Still, Logan didn't move. His posture remained locked, eyes forward, shoulders square. He didn't even blink. But that made it worse. Mikey, now emboldened, spread his arms wide like a performer on stage. "I knew it! He's not real! It's just a guy in a costume," he said, his voice dripping with mockery. His friends laughed behind their phone screens, but their laughter wasn't as loud now. There was hesitation. Even they could feel the shift. The crowd watched in silence, waiting. Logan didn't react, but his presence was no longer just ceremonial. His stillness now carried weight, tension, warning. Suddenly, Mikey leaned in closer. "What's the matter, soldier? Cat got your tongue?" he hissed, just inches from Logan's face. It was taunting at its peak, disrespect in its rawest form. Yet Logan stood firm, as if carved from stone. The silence was deafening. That's when a woman in the back called out, "Somebody stop him!" But no one moved. It was as if everyone had collectively agreed to let the moment play out, to see what would happen when centuries of discipline met one man's need for attention. And just like that, the line wasn't the only thing Mikey Cool had crossed. The question now wasn't if Logan would react, but when. But when. And then, Mikey Cool went too far. With both feet firmly over the line and the crowd holding its breath, he reached into the back pocket of his shorts and pulled out a large 16-ounce cup, half filled with ice water. He raised it above his head like some kind of trophy, grinning as if he'd just discovered the punchline to his own twisted joke. "Let's wake this statue up," he declared, loud enough for everyone to hear. The crowd gasped. A few people stepped back. One man muttered, "No way, he wouldn't." But he did. Without another word, Mikey launched the cup forward. Water flew through the air in a sparkling arc, splashing directly onto Logan's pristine red uniform and his polished black boots. Droplets ran down the gold buttons of his tunic and clung to the soft fur of his bearskin hat. The square went silent. Even the birds seemed to pause mid-flight. For a heartbeat, Logan remained completely still. And then, everything changed. He moved. It wasn't fast, but it was sharp, calculated. Logan took one crisp, deliberate step forward. His black boots hit the stone with purpose. In one seamless motion, he shifted his rifle from rest to ready, holding it firmly across his chest. Then his voice cut through the air like a crack of thunder. "Step back behind the line immediately!" The sound of it echoed against the palace walls. It wasn't just loud, it was commanding, full of power and training. People far in the back instinctively took a step back, as if the words had pushed them. Even Mikey stumbled slightly, caught off guard. But the guard didn't shout again. He didn't need to. Logan stood tall, still as ever, but now he radiated presence, authority, the kind you don't question, the kind you feel in your chest. For a second, Mikey tried to play it off. He shoved his hands into his pockets and smirked. "Oh, so now you talk?" he said, forcing a laugh. But it didn't land. The crowd wasn't laughing anymore. His friends weren't even recording. The joke had ended, and Mikey Cool had just become the punchline. Just when it felt like the tension couldn't stretch any tighter, a sound pierced the heavy silence, soft but unmistakable. A child was crying. The voice came from near the back of the crowd, where a young boy, no older than 8, clutched the hand of an elderly man dressed in a weathered coat. The boy wore a t-shirt with the British royal crest printed on the front, now slightly wrinkled from his grip. His wide, teary eyes were locked on Logan, and in a shaky voice he asked, "Grandpa, why did he throw water at the guard?" The old man didn't answer right away. He stood tall but tired, his silver hair peeking out from under a flat cap. Medals gleamed quietly on his lapel, proof of a life once spent in service. He looked at his grandson, then at Logan, and slowly shook his head. There were no words to explain the kind of disrespect they had just witnessed. Logan, still standing firm, caught the moment from the corner of his eye. That's when something shifted, not in his stance, but in his purpose. Breaking protocol ever so slightly, he stepped forward once more and did something no one expected. He knelt. Just enough to meet the boy at eye level. The crowd went completely silent. With a calm, steady voice that sounded nothing like the thunderous command from earlier, Logan said, "It's all right, young man. People like that, they learn respect in time." The boy nodded slowly, wiping his face. And the old man, his grandfather, removed his cap in a quiet gesture of gratitude, revealing thinning white hair beneath it. "Thank you, sir," he said, voice low but filled with meaning. That moment changed everything. The crowd, once divided between amusement and tension, now turned united. Whispers turned into comments, quiet into outrage, not at the guard, but at Mikey. Someone shouted, "You should be ashamed!" Another added, "He's standing there for tradition, and you mock him?" Even Mikey's friends started backing away. Their laughter had died long ago. One of them placed a hand on his shoulder, muttering, "Maybe that's enough, man." But Mikey, too stubborn to admit defeat, raised his hands and scoffed. "All right, whatever. You're all boring. I'm out of here." He turned to leave, still pretending to be in control, still not realizing the moment had moved far beyond him. But Mikey didn't get far. He barely made it 5 steps before someone stepped directly into his path. A uniformed royal security officer, tall, composed, and clearly not amused. The officer's eyes locked onto Mikey's with a level of seriousness that wiped the smirk right off his face. "Sir," the officer said firmly, "you are under arrest for disorderly conduct." For a second, Mikey froze. He glanced around, expecting someone to laugh or maybe defend him. But the only thing he saw were phones still recording and faces filled with satisfaction. Then came the sound he didn't expect. Applause! It started with a single clap from the back of the crowd, then spread like wildfire. Cheers, whistles, and shouts of support rang out. Finally, someone yelled. That's what he deserves, said another. The same crowd that had once watched in silence now roared with approval. Mikey opened his mouth to protest, but his voice was drowned out by the celebration. His earlier confidence melted into confusion. He looked to his friends, but they had already started to slip away, not wanting to be part of the fallout. One of them even turned his phone off and walked in the opposite direction. Meanwhile, Logan quietly returned to his position. He adjusted the cuff of his sleeve, straightened his stance, and with a soft inhale, resumed his post, exactly as he had before, as if none of it had happened. His composure was unshaken, his discipline unbroken, but something had changed. The crowd didn't just see a royal guard anymore. They saw a man who stood tall through humiliation, who didn't flinch under pressure, and who offered kindness to a child when it mattered most. To many, Logan wasn't just a soldier now. He was a symbol. Nearby, the young boy who had cried earlier stood a little taller, eyes wide with admiration. His grandfather placed a hand gently on his shoulder, then removed his cap once more in silent respect. Logan, noticing, gave a subtle nod, barely noticeable, but deeply meaningful. As the crowd slowly began to disperse, many were still recording, still whispering, still shaken. And in the hours that followed, headlines would flood the internet. Royal Guard's composed response goes viral. Honor over ego, a lesson outside the palace. And for everyone who witnessed it firsthand, Logan's silence had spoken louder than any shout ever could. What would you have done if you were standing in that crowd? Would you have spoken up? Stayed silent? Stories like this remind us how powerful respect, discipline, and composure can be, especially in a world where attention often wins over honor. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Do you think Logan did the right thing by staying calm, or should he have responded sooner? Share your opinion in the comments below, and tell us, where are you watching from? It's always amazing to see people from all over the world coming together through these real, powerful moments. Every comment helps keep the conversation alive, and your voice truly matters here. Let us know how this story made you feel, whether it inspired you, frustrated you, or reminded you of a similar experience. We read every single one. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe and turn on that bell so you don't miss tomorrow's new story. It's one we promise will stay with you long after the video ends. Thanks for being part of this growing community. Let's keep sharing, learning, and remembering what really matters.